Everyone wants to know which one of these rookie quarterbacks will turn out the best. It's something we're going to talk about for you dynasty GMs out there. It's the Audible Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom. And it's not because I'm a Broncos fan, because I'm not. It's not because I'm wearing orange and blue. No, that's because of the Knicks. But Bloom, Bo Nix might be that guy that turns out to be the best. He's the sixth quarterback. Yeah. And he might be the best when all is said and done, partly because of him, but partly because of Sean Payton, mostly
Right,
because of Sean Payton.
right. Cease. I think that the bigger story here is that the fate of the Broncos is the fate of Sean Payton. I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's what, and Bo Nix is a pawn. Bo Nix is a supporting cast player in the story. This
Right.
story is about this, and it's really interesting to look back on the time that you've been covering the Broncos, while you and I have been doing this show now almost 20 years, because um, it seems like they're getting sucked into the downward spirals of all these different characters with one chapter of Peyton Manning and the revival of Peyton Manning, and ironically winning the Super Bowl when Peyton Manning was already done basically as a player. But you start to look Josh McDaniels, Paxton Lynch, even Aaron Rodgers. They even have gotten sucked into the Aaron Rodgers downward spiral, even though he hasn't been on the team. Right? Russell
Right.
Wilson. Now, is this a downward spiral for Sean Payton? Is this the latest chapter of you're putting all your eggs in this guy's basket? It's a more imperial way of looking at running a team as opposed to by a committee or by a process or by a set of ideas, right? It's okay, Sean Payton, fix the
Go.
team, save the team. And now I guess that's okay, Bo Nix, save the offense. And I think that this year is going to be more of I hope that the Broncos, I mean, I guess the Broncos fans have to be patient if they are anything because of, well, the last few years, what they've been enduring. And it's not going to come together right away. The skill talent is not there to make this come together right away. But I think that Sean Payton did find his quarterback that he can run the joystick on.
Mhm.
He has football. Look in his backpack. Everything is football. He doesn't even eat. He doesn't eat football because he doesn't eat. He's only thinking about football 24 hours a day. But that's,
Uh,
what Sean Payton can say, okay, you're going to become an extension to me. You're my son now,
mhm.
basically. And this year, we'll see. We'll start to analyze and say, oh, this, because you said it all year. I hope that people are listening when you're telling people these things that Sean Payton never trusted Russell Wilson. Look, we can get into the controversy about, and I think people take it too far and they'll say he couldn't handle it. No, it wasn't.
No.
Could he not handle it? That wasn't the question. The reality is Sean Payton never wanted Russell Wilson. The
Right.
media, including people like me, I'll cop to stuff like this. What do we do? I'm the mayor of Narrative Street, okay? Said, oh, Sean Payton took this job because he thinks he can fix Russell Wilson, because he looked at what Nathaniel Hackett did to take Russell Wilson's game down to the gutter and he can get it back to where it was with Seattle. That was not why he took the job. And Russell Wilson has moved on. And now it's, well, Bo Nix. That's the kind of quarterback he wants. We know.
All right. That's the head coach on the field, right?
Yeah.
And it is about that combination. When we look at Caleb Williams' talent far outweighs the talent of Bo Nix. But I'm worried about Caleb Williams, like I say on every show, Bloom. Like, is Chicago going to ruin him? Is
Mhm.
Eberflus the guy? You seem to be a bit more gentle in your take on that. But
Yeah.
let's chop that up because the fate of the Broncos is tied to Bo Nix. The fate of Caleb Williams, he could go to a second team and be
Right.
everything that he's supposed to be because the natural talent and again, the physical stuff is super easy to see. It's off the charts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun to do these thought experiments, Cease. We've done it a few times on this show with, well, what if the Texans were left with Bryce Young and the Panthers had taken CJ Stroud? Is CJ Stroud's sphere of influence so strong? Is his gravitational pull so strong that even in a bad organization run with bad process, a meddlesome owner, etc.,
Mm,
bad head coach hire, and so on, that CJ Stroud was going to pull it into his, I'm the next great quarterback, and we would be talking about Panthers as a team on the rise. and it was worth it to trade up to number 1, and it was a brilliant trade, right? And we'd be looking at the Texans. Was it Bryce Young? Are the Panthers pulling down Bryce Young, or did Bryce Young pull down the Panthers? Obviously, the answer is not as simple yes or no. But you also have this conversation about Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if we're going to tell the story of Patrick Mahomes, he landed with the perfect coach and the perfect team. And he landed with a team that had structure built around him, as Matt Williamson put it, the nest for Caleb Williams, and then enter Shane Waldron. So Shane Waldron is more important than Matt Eberflus here, unless you think Matt Eberflus is just such a dog poop head coach that he's going to ruin his team.
Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. I mean, see, I don't even know if that's possible. I guess Urban Meyer, even Nathaniel Hackett, as bad as a head coach as he was, like a team can just overcome a bad head coach and say, it's our team. Who cares about him? You know, um, but a team, Matt Eberflus, I think, is not going to determine the fate of Caleb Williams. It's more Shane Waldron, who
Mhm.
did so much for Geno Smith, and it is this structure around him. So we may never have to have the conversation of could the Bears ruin him. And what's ironic about that is the Bears probably did ruin Justin Fields. As a Steelers fan, I hope they didn't. And as a Steelers fan and as a fantasy football player in dynasty superflex leagues, like I'm probably going to bet on Justin Fields getting a second contract from the Steelers. I want it to happen.
Yes. Yes.
I want it to happen. I want Fields to beat Wilson right out of training camp. We'll see. And I want the answer to be that the Bears did not ruin Justin Fields, even though they did not create a coaching staff or supporting cast or team offensive philosophy around him to help him flourish. I think the Steelers will do a better job of that.
Let's bring in our off-air conversation. Not
Yeah.
all of it, Bloom,
Yeah.
but it's care. You
Yeah.
mentioned nurture. You mentioned the nest. What is a nest? What is nurture? It's
Yeah.
care.
Right.
Thoughts, emotions, actions. It's care. You must care. They care about the future of Caleb Williams. Just don't screw it up.
Right.
So they
And
do
it
have a nest around him.
Yeah, and it could be Cease, it could be just as simple as like and again, I'm not gonna say ownership. The Bears don't really have that kind of structure where there's someone up atop. So I'm not gonna say that's what happened here. But I think you can have this happen like with Trey Lance and Justin Fields in that same draft, where maybe there's not agreement on a quarterback,
Mhm.
and somebody between the GM and the head coach has to take the L on the decision, and then you have animosity, you have a rift,
Right.
and
Right.
you can think about this in terms of marriages. And, Jake Seeley was on the couch this week and had some real heartwarming stuff to share about marriage. I hope everybody has, everybody that's married makes them feel warm when they think about it that way. But some of these marriages are cold. They're cold whenever somebody has to have a quarterback they didn't want. But Caleb Williams, I think everybody wanted.
Yeah, everybody should want that guy, and that leads us to Jayden Daniels. I love him, Bloom. I absolutely love him, and my
Hmm.
only
Hmm.
concern with Jayden is his health because he's got a smaller lower body. It's the same
Hmm.
thing I was worried about with Teddy Bridgewater. It's the same thing I was worried about with Deshaun Watson. Off the charts, my number one quarterback. Yes, even with Caleb Williams, generational talent. Well, Jaden's right there. He enters the league with MVP likability. And I think it's rare. I think his explosive play rate is rare. I think he thinks he's Josh Allen or Cam Newton when he runs.
Right.
So hopefully he kind of dials that back in. But if we talk about which one of these six is going to be the best, Jaden to me is the obvious choice outside of man alive. He plays with reckless abandon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think health is probably, and it's interesting. You get into topics here that are important topics and not topics we are going to discuss on this show today. Certainly topics we have touched on in the past and we'll touch on in the future. But I understand why people bristle when you say Jayden Daniels, and two of the quarterbacks that come to mind right away are Robert Griffin III and Lamar Jackson. And there's a conversation where with needs much more subtlety and much more time than the one we're going to have here today about that. However, when we talk about Jayden Daniels and staying healthy, RG3 enters the chat because of, it did happen in Washington. I mean, come on.
Mhm.
And also it's not just will he miss time or will he have injuries that rob him of some of his athletic upside? But you saw with Robert Griffin III that the injuries really changed him mentally, emotionally as a quarterback after that. He just didn't have that same edge. So you hope that Jayden Daniels doesn't have that same kind of crash. But otherwise, what's exciting about Jayden Daniels, Cease, and what I think of immediately when you bring him up is the way that the conversation about Jayden Daniels was different than about any of the other quarterbacks. And what it revolved around was defensive coordinators do not want to prepare for a quarterback like him. And again, that's
Right.
why it's reasonable to bring up RG3 or reasonable to bring up Lamar Jackson. Reasonable to bring up the idea of as a defensive coordinator, when you have a quarterback who is, and Josh Allen also comes into this conversation too. When you have a quarterback who is able to run in some cases, in the 4-4s, or otherwise has enough athletic talent that if they get loose against man-to-man coverage, if they get loose from the pocket, you're looking at chunk gains as a scrambler, the potential for chunk gains. That
Right.
is something you have to game plan for that.
And
You
you
have
can't
to.
really do that. You can't
And you
really.
can't.
Hey, there's gonna be a time he's gonna have a 50-yard run.
Right.
We had everything called perfectly, and he breaks one tackle or makes one guy miss, and it's a 50-yard touchdown run or whatever.
It's demoralizing. It's
Yeah.
demoralizing for a defense. So you can't check all the boxes when you have a quarterback who can keep, and this is the other key about Daniel's play, is he keeps the entire field in play, just like Josh Allen. When you have to defend the entire field because of someone's deep passing acumen and arm, and you have to play 11 on 11 football because of the potential for a quarterback to get chunk gains when they're loose, defenses are in an impossible place. That's why Daniels just needs to stay on the field. And then we'll talk a little bit about Cliff Kingsbury because we had Cliff and Kyler and none of the fireworks and didn't ever work out the way anyone hoped. Maybe some of that's Steve Keim. They're in better hands with Monty Austin for it. We'll see about Kyler's next act. Could be good, could be very good. Uh, and Cliff, without head coach too soon, maybe too much too fast for Cliff to become a head coach. Offensive coordinator, yes, he's done that job. He knows that job. And now he has a fresh start with Dan Quinn, who is not going to lean in on, just like Matt Eberflus. Dan Quinn's going to let Cliff run his shop.
Right, right. And let's talk about that because we mentioned the legacy of Sean Payton being tied to Bo Nix. If you're Cliff Kingsbury, you want another head coaching job. That's tied to Jayden
Yeah,
Daniels. And quickly on the Robert Griffin III thing, we don't need to
yeah,
belabor this, but
yeah,
he went into Mike Shanahan with the group of plays that he wasn't going to run anymore. So I think it was like the knee and it took his confidence. Yeah, okay, maybe. I think it was more him being aloha to Mike Shanahan, who
yeah,
would have, hey, you're not quite the same as a runner. You know what Mike would have done? He would have crafted plays that have made it work. But Robert came in to his office, set it on his desk. I'm not running these plays anymore.
yeah.
Well,
It was
screw you, young pup.
There
Like, you
was a
got to
lot of
listen to the
hard
old man.
feelings. There was a lot of hard
After
feelings.
1 year,
Yeah, a
after
lot of hard
1 year, and
feelings.
it was brilliant, and they were taking it to the Legion of Boom. They were going to beat
Yeah,
Seattle.
but Cease, there was the moment, the Rocky moment, throw the damn towel in that game. I remember watching that game. I remember watching him look like a fawn on a frozen pond.
Mm,
And feeling like I can see this. I'm not trying, I mean, you want to go back to an emotional moment watching a football game. It was watching Robert
yeah,
Griffin III on a football field in a playoff game in a situation where he really couldn't protect himself. And I think that was hard to endure, and it just shows how hard it is to come back from that.
yeah, yep. Hard to come back from getting ruined as a rookie, and that might happen to Drake May. I hope it doesn't. Okay, and I've said the highest bust factor of this group of quarterbacks is Drake
Yes,
May,
I agree.
and now the reports. I just wrote about it yesterday on Wednesday's edition of our Football Guys newsletter, where they're like, Drake may start week one. It's a disaster. You have Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is a
Right,
good quarterback. He's
right.
a good quarterback. Drake May. The problem with Drake May, it'll always go back to this until we see something different. If it's a 3rd and 7, and there's a 5-yard breaking in route that he could perhaps put on time and on target, and then the receiver maybe can get those other 2 yards and you move the chains. So instead of taking that throw, Drake will stare and bird dog
Hmm.
at the 12-yard route or 15 or 20-yard route. So he could just, I got it, guys. And he plays the hero ball. That's what hero ball means. Sometimes you have to live to fight another day. Sometimes you got to take that check down or the shorter pass. Check downs means first downs. Like sometimes you got to trust in your talent to do that. May's got arm arrogance. Again, I don't like his personality. That's a different conversation. But it's like if New England's going to start him week one, boom. I mean,
Oof, good luck.
you
Yeah.
got another Mac Jones situation.
Well, and let's compare and contrast Bo Nix and Drake May here
Mm.
because what we're saying, it's a good thing that Bo Nix is like a ninth year senior because he's gonna have to start day one. He's gonna have to. You know, the alternative is Jared Stidham, right? I mean, he's gonna start day one. Zach Wilson. He's gonna start day one. But like you said, Drake May doesn't have to start day one.
No.
And you hope for Jacoby Brissett that they really have a genuine competition and a competition with the goal being to win games this year. You know, like not to be a playoff team this year. That's not going to happen. But the idea being like, who's more ready to run this offense right now? And if Drake May, I mean, if Drake May really is A plus straight A plus student, okay. But what's scary about Drake May and why he absolutely sees you're right has the biggest bust factor is that he's looking at what Denver has. He's like, I wish I had Mims and Franklin, Sutton. I mean, Polk and Baker are fine complementary receivers. I like Javon Baker a lot. They don't have a number one. They don't have someone that's like, who's going to win? Who's going to win on third down? They don't have that in that offense. The cupboard is bare. And Alex Van Pelt, think about the offensive coordinator names we've talked about so far in this conversation. Sees Alex Van Pelt doesn't quite fit in, and
Yeah.
he just got fired. He got fired. Okay, you just hired someone that got
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah.
You know,
That's one
so
of
the
those kindergarten tests where it's like Sean Payton, Shane Waldron, Cliff Kingsbury, Alex Van Pelt. Which one of these doesn't
right
belong?
former Pitt quarterback Alex Van Pelt. Anyway, the problem here is if you're looking for that landmine, you know, the quicksand in Drake May's profile, it is making decisions under pressure. It is unforced errors that probably, if you're extrapolating it, has to do with like putting it's when things go wrong with Josh Allen too, like he's putting too much on his shoulders, like you say, hero ball. And when you're in an offense that doesn't have guys who win in their routes yet, you're going to be forced to play hero ball. You're going to be forced to try to be Andrew Luck. He's not Andrew Luck. Okay. If he has a dream that he's Andrew Luck, you wake up and apologize to Andrew Luck wherever he is enjoying life right now. And I think, unfortunately, you know, Drake May, the Viking, does not have the lowest bust factor
No.
in this class. Drake May, the Patriot, absolutely does.
Yeah, and if you're Gerard Mayo, what are you doing, man? You had a year. You had a year. You could just be
Well,
like,
was it
I
his
got
decision? Was it his decision? This is a
Robert
team that is
Kraft.
looking right. This is a team that's looking for a GM right now.
Hmm.
Huh. That's pretty wild to make that big of a decision when you are looking for a GM after the draft. So it's not Elliot Wolf. He wasn't even the GM, you know?
Right.
There
Right.
was a Kraft name. I mean, it was reported that it was a Jonathan Kraft. I think that, you know, he's included in the process. Ownership is included in the process.
Oh
So
boy.
this is what you pay for, Patriots fans. You had it. You had your 20 years.
Hmm.
Now it's time to go back to being a bottom feeder.
There you go. JJ McCarthy, though, gets the Minnesota treatment, which could be really good for him. And we'll throw in Michael Penix as well
Sure.
because I the Penix pick is going to work. And people who
It
had the what
much
are they
yeah. They're
doing?
gonna hate it.
It,
Yeah.
you're going to hate it and you're going to have egg on your face and you're going to go back and delete your tweets. But the Penix pick will work. When does it work? We don't know, but it will work. And I know Zach Robinson, there's a name that belongs in the offensive coordinator conversation, even though he's a first time OC. Zach Robinson will be a head coach, and I will be asking him for a job. Anyway, let's talk about
Nice,
JJ
nice.
and Penix
Yeah,
here to wrap up
yeah,
the show.
wrap it up. I and with JJ, I think that you have an ideal situation set up here, and it would have been ideal for Drake May too. You have the structure already in place. You have an offense that is very good, and you have Sam Darnold, who has his own incentive to ball out, do the best he can this year, and try to earn a bigger contract as a bridge quarterback somewhere else. You can look and see the number of teams that could or are likely to need a quarterback next year. It's even more than this year, even though
Mhm.
a bunch of teams got quarterbacks. So Sam Darnold, yes, his service. Drew Lock, another one who's going to get an audition for a bigger contract next year. Not a franchise quarterback, but hey, you know, Geno Smith turned his Baker Mayfield turned his into $100 million deals. So it's out there. You can change the league's opinion. Look what Case Keenum did in Minnesota. You can change the league's opinion about you pretty quickly if you're a quarterback. So let Sam Darnold play this out until week 17 or week 18. What was JJ McCarthy's biggest knock? Not lack of reps, lack of sample size. Perfect. Let him incubate on the bench, learn, and he's going to be in a good situation. Penix, I'll cite something that Jeff Bell, the great Jeff Bell, Football Guys colleague, put out there,
Fantastic.
who I think he was quoting Bucky Brooks or referring to Bucky Brooks and the truck and trailer analogy, and that the Falcons offense didn't have a truck. It had the trailer with all the stuff,
Hmm.
but Kirk Cousins is the truck. But if Kirk Cousins gets the offense going, just like he did in Minnesota, right? 6 degrees in Minnesota, then by the time Penix takes over, Penix can also be basically a trailer. I mean, Penix can just hop on the already in motion. Now this offense is going to be working with Zach Robinson's help, and Penix is likely to succeed, and they're going to hate it. Cease. I'm going to love it. I'm going to love it. There's going to be so many people rooting against poor Michael Penix, but poor Michael Penix actually, I think, has overcome a lot in his career already, so it may actually help him. What am I even talking about? They don't care what fantasy football players think. There's going to be all kinds of fantasy football and draft. They don't care what NFL draft analysts. Who is Mel Kiper, right? They don't care what draft analysts say. They don't care what fantasy football players say. So not poor Michael Penix. He doesn't even care. I think that you are going to see a lot of people so frustrated that the pick is going to work. And I do think if you have been paying attention for the last week or two, more and more quote unquote smart football people are saying, yeah, the pick made sense. I understand it. It's a good process.
Mm. He can sling it. And in dynasty leagues, you know what I'm doing? I'm buying Michael Penix and I'm waiting.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. I'm getting McDonald's at $1 or whatever.
Right, right.
I got a bunch of wealthy friends. I'm like, can you share some tips? Like, besides getting Netflix at $12 or whatever. Do you have any tips for the common man who loves
Right,
comic books?
right.
Anyway.
So, well, I don't know, Cease. I've had a few of those tips fall into my lap at different points in my life, and I'm the fool in the saying, a fool and his money are soon parted.
There we go. Let's do this. Want to help you out, help us out on YouTube. You want to help out the show, subscribe to footballguys.com. Follow Sigmund Bloom on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible. We thank you all very much. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty?